Hey everybody, I'm Francesca Maxime and this is WiseGirl. Thanks so much for watching. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to meditate and this idea of, what it means to be a good meditator, if that is a thought that has ever entered your head. And if so, why the goal is less to be a good meditator and more to live a happy life, a life filled with well-being, however you get there. I think that there's a lot of teachings that align with meditation and with contemplation that are very much in line with greater well-being for not only ourselves, but the relational aspects of our lives, the communities and the people that we engage with at a local level in our family or place of work, but also on a global level, as ultimately we are really all interconnected, but that we actually have a sort of template given these sort of teachings and these sort of contemplative ideas that at times can sound kind of lofty and philosophical, but really are embodied and grounded in practical applications that can help us with our happiness and well-being. In the United States and in the Western world, I think that one of the things that we have sort of gone after is this idea of happiness, right? The Declaration of Independence is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, there's a couple of things in there that I think are kind of intriguing. One of the things in terms of labeling it as happiness and furthermore the pursuit of happiness, implied there is in some ways that happiness is some kind of a fixed idea or a fixed entity that we can somehow get to or achieve. Now, if we're looking at the world as evidenced by us, filled with change, filled with impermanence, filled with things that don't stay the way that they once were, whether you may want to look at your body and see how your body has changed and it's sagging in ways that it didn't used to, or hair is graying in places that it didn't, or whether or not a marriage has dissolved, or a loved one has passed away, or a job has evaporated and gone up in smoke, or whole industries for that matter have changed or evaporated. I think it's safe to say that change is inevitable, and it's sort of how we relate to that change and our willingness to accept the fact that things are constantly in a state of flux, and our ability to recognize that that is an ever-changing state as opposed to trying to cling to one piece that we fixate onto, such as an ideation of what happiness would mean and its pursuit, which oftentimes could be interpreted as a control that can kind of get us into trouble and lead us to dis-ease or unhappiness. And so looking at this idea of happiness not as being a fixed entity, but rather eudaimonia, which is called well-being, which is really more this resting state of kind of calm and peacefulness and aliveness, coupled with a sort of general spaciousness and extension of what we can hold in our mind and in our body and in our world, really, what we make room for and what we make room for accepting, that kind of well-being is something that is less pursued, if you will, and more something that we can kind of drop into. It's more of a relaxed state that in this culture, which is very much promoting of control and effort and achieving and comparison and therefore division, because if I'm comparing myself to someone else, better or worse, I'm better or you're worse, or you're better and I'm worse, or however it is, all those things can create a sense of dis-ease and of uproar within ourselves that isn't really necessary. So how do we have a more constant state of well-being and a more constant state of equanimity, which is balance and wisdom, and a more discerned state of skillful actions, meaning we kind of have a better sense of what to do and what not to do, and when to do it and when not to do it. So sometimes we're going to require that we put more effort into a situation. For example, if we're meditating, it's not so much this fixed idea that we have to be a good meditator. It's that if we open up to meditating for 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, which just means sitting quietly with your feet planted on the floor, your hands in your lap, possibly your eyes closed or otherwise lowered with a soft gaze like this, that you could sit with yourself and just notice whatever it is that you are thinking or feeling without judging it, and just bring a kind attention to your own experience and not have to attach yourself to it. So you can do that for 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days, 10 years. You can experience this sort of concentrated state and then all of the levels of consciousness that go along with that, which is usually a greater awareness, a greater ability to see who is it that's kind of meditating right now, and then who is it and what is it that is even aware of the meditator, right? So it's this deeper level of sensations, energy, and vibrations that eventually you can kind of become more in tune with and aware of. And it very much can start with embodied sensations in your body, in your gut, and different kinds of practices like yoga or dance or movement exercises can also kind of help you get there, in addition to just sitting and meditating. But again, bringing this back to real life, why do we even want to practice these things and put our efforts into something like that, as opposed to sort of some fixed idea of controlling a situation or being disciplined enough so that we can kind of get there, and there being this happiness state that is sort of this achievement that we're going for? Well, if you can sort of relax that and rest in a more peaceful state of equilibrium, well-being, eudaimonia, we're able to make decisions from a place of spaciousness. We create an ability to respond as opposed to react. And we often detach storylines that we have in our heads. I'm a terrible person, or this guy never liked me, or this woman always had it in for me, or whatever it is. We detach from those storylines and we are able to more clearly see things as they are, as opposed to our conditioning, which is often the filter through which we're, looking at the whole world, and we're projecting the whole world, but we don't really, have an ability, unless we focus on this ability to see more spaciously. We don't often have an ability to see beyond our immediate conditioning and our own projections. So again, in real life, the goal isn't so much to be a good meditator. It's to be able to live a life that's kinder and more compassionate toward yourself and others, to find out what's really in your heart about what you really want to do, and what it is that means something to you, and why. It's to be able to have an ability to look at your own experiences and your history and your future even too, and hold them lightly, but with compassion and with a certain amount of kindness and tenderness, as opposed to rejection. So in the discipline and the effort that's required often of meditation or of any kind of sort of fruitful practice where there's a certain degree of self-inquiry, we can kind of see that the fruit that it bears isn't so much that we get a certificate at the end of the day that says, gee, you achieved this, you got a piece of paper, you graduated college or med school, or you passed the bar, you made partner, or whatever it is. It's more to say, you know what, I have a better handle on how to exist in this world in real time in a way that is more able to be compassionate and thoughtful and incorporate ideas that aren't just the ones that are coming from my own head. It's creating a certain amount of openness and spaciousness that I think, especially at this time, maybe throughout history, but especially at this time, closing out 2016, a lot of us kind of have been looking for and calling for and sort of saying, where do we go from here? What are we doing? in terms of stepping into 2017 here in the United States and in other parts of the country. So I would invite you to consider that being a good meditator really isn't the goal necessarily, but just sort of creating enough space in your heart and in your life so that you have a greater sense of ease and well-being, and that you're more relaxed overall, that perhaps you can invite that in. And that can be as simple as starting with just taking a few deep breaths anytime you feel constriction in your body, anytime you feel a certain amount of dis-ease, and just giving yourself a minute. Because again, it takes 90 seconds for an emotion to rise and fall. So give yourself that time before you say something back to your son or daughter or husband or wife or in an email or a text. See if you can't give yourself a little bit of space. Because the real victory, I think, is in being able to live a happier life. Because it's only your life, one life, that we've been given. And we all hope that we can enjoy it fully and tend to ourselves with as much compassion as we also aim to give and share with others. Thanks.